Content warning for panic attack descriptions and reference to self-medicating with alcohol.
Hi, Neuro Clan. So, for those of you that don't know, October is Mental Health Awareness Month, and as it is that, we decided to have a few chats with some of our members about the different ways mental health can affect us. And I am so delighted to be here with Sarah today. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi everyone, my name is Sarah Dwan. I run Life Through My Lens, which some of you might follow me on my social media, and I'm a disability advocate. I'm a neuro inclusion advocate as well, and I'm a contributing writer for Neuro Pride Ireland. Delighted to be part of the team.
And we are so lucky to have you. Sarah is an incredible writer, and we are just like with all of our volunteers, we are so lucky to have them. But you are neurodivergent yourself. Is there anything you want to say on that?
Yeah, so I'm multiply neurodivergent. It's a lot easier to say than the list. So I'm autistic. I'm ADHD, waiting on my formal assessment for that, and I also have I have panic disorder. I have OCD as well. So I am going to be talking about panic disorder today. Yeah.
Perfect. And I think it's fair to say panic disorders are much more common than people believe they are,
Yeah.
especially within the neurodivergent community. But I think it's important to recognize, yes, everybody gets nervous coming up to things and everybody can have panic attacks, but that does not equate to a panic disorder.
Yeah, exactly. So panic disorder is marked by frequent panic attacks, and they're often unexpected, often with no clear trigger. So it might not be very, very obvious why you're having the panic attack. It's characterized by like a sudden wave of fear or of losing control. In my experience, though, there's always a trigger.
Yeah.
And that comes through a lot of self-awareness, self-understanding, and knowing kind of your own triggers, which takes a lot of learning, not as Cír said, not everyone who has a panic attack has panic disorder. Okay, because panic attacks, panic disorder is frequent. So I'm 35 now. It started for me when I was 21, so it's almost 14 years. And panic, it's not a character flaw, it's not a sign of weakness, and it's not a sign of low resilience whatsoever. Brain imaging will show that it is associated with biological changes in the brain. Okay, so there's biological changes in the brain. Okay, so as a result, it falls under the neurodivergence umbrella. Okay, so because neurodivergent, the term, since its inception 23 years ago, okay, this term is around 23 years. This is not a new term, but what's happening is neurodiversity as a term is a buzzword, and there's a lot of bandwagon jumping without actually knowing what it means. And it's a debated topic about what falls under the umbrella of neurodivergence, and it divides even advocates as well. But the fact is, whether you want to agree or not, since its inception 23 years ago, neurodivergent means having a brain that diverges from what society deems typical. And that's it. Okay. So it includes, if your brain diverges in a way that society deems typical, you can identify as neurodivergent. You do not have to if you don't want to, of course, you don't have to. But that's just what the term means. And this is, it's great to see organizations such as Neuro Pride, providing a platform for all neurodivergences, and you cannot advocate for neuro inclusion if you're not advocating for all. So basically, neurodivergence is not just neurodevelopmental differences such as autism, ADHD, and like dyslexia, hyperlexia, things like that. It does, in fact, include a lot of mental conditions, mental health conditions.
Does.
Yeah.
And I know panic disorder is one of those mental health conditions that we share. But because it looks different for everyone, what does it look like for you?
Yeah, like it does. Like everything, it looks different for everybody. For me, it's acute. Okay, so it comes on quickly, and a panic attack is not to be confused with an anxiety attack. You know, anxiety attack is different. There's often a build up to an anxiety attack. It often lasts a lot longer. Panic attacks, for me at least, they're very acute. They come on quickly. My face goes pale, so I go white. Racing heart, rapid breathing, a cold sweat, shaking, chattering teeth, pins and needles in my extremities. And the reason why that happens, I learned, is because it's a defense mechanism. Okay, so your body tries to protect the main organs, you know, your central organs. So all the important bits of you are in your core. So what it does is it's a defense mechanism, and the blood goes, oh, we have to go protect the heart and lungs, you know, let's leave these legs and arms, you know, they're not as important right now, because there's a perceived sense of threat and danger. And so it's a defense mechanism. So I get the pins and needles. Again, not everybody will get that. What else happens to me? My logic is gone. Logic has gone out the window. You know, your cognitive processing is down. You might say things that do not make sense to other people. You might make connections where there are no connections whatsoever to other people. But so logic is gone. At least for me. Stimming for me increases. So I do a lot of verbal stims. You'll probably notice throughout. Like I do, or not verbal stims, oral stims. With my mouth. So I'll do, you know, that a lot. This in it, the shaking, you know, shaking out my hands, and I think that's to do with, you know, because the blood is leaving my hands. I got pins and needles, so you're like, it's just an automatic reflex, kind of like to try and get the blood back into your hands, you know. And that's just it's a way of regulating, you know. Stimming is one of the most amazing things. We do it naturally. We naturally try to regulate, you know. So that's one of them for me. I get a heightened awareness and heightened responses to sensory stimuli during a panic attack, because obviously my nervous system is under threat. So I perceive everything in my environment way more anyway. But in a panic attack, if you could believe it's possible, I do perceive things even heightened again during a panic attack. So, you know, lights will be even brighter, sounds will be even louder. I also get the, you know, dry mouth, extremely thirsty. And I also get depersonalization and derealization. And basically all that means is when you don't feel real, or your body doesn't belong to you. So, and again, a lot of people don't get that as part of their panic attacks. I do. And again, it's a type of defense mechanism that your body does. It's basically like dissociating, because your body is trying to protect you from this danger or threat that your nervous system has perceived. And lastly, it's terrifying. Panic attacks are just terrifying. I wouldn't wish them on absolutely anybody. It's the closest thing that I can imagine, you know, of dying, feeling like you're going to die. And it's terrifying. But yeah, that's what they're like for me ultimately.
Yes, they can be very terrifying. And I just want to take this moment to say that for anybody who's listening, I know our brains are amazing things. They're incredible things. And sometimes we can start feeling these things even upon hearing them. So hearing about how Sarah's heart's racing, your heart may race. It is okay to take a breath. It is okay to pause the video. It is okay to leave the video, come back, or never come back. Do what you need to do to take care of yourself throughout these conversations, because they are difficult conversations. And But on that note, is there anything that shocked you about the panic disorder?
Yeah, for me, the most shocking thing for me was I gave up alcohol, right? I gave up alcohol 7 years ago, and my panic attacks increased. They increased, and I would have largely blamed alcohol for my panic attacks. Like, yeah, I'm hungover, I'm gonna get a panic. I would have, so I would have thought
Yeah.
alcohol was the cause of a lot of my panic attacks. And it turns out I was wrong, It turns out I was self-medicating all this time without realizing, So yeah, they increased when I give up alcohol. And learning that I was autistic when I was formally identified, like 2.5 years ago, that actually significantly reduced my panic attacks. Just learning that, because I have the type of brain that will study everything about something that I do not know. So I studied all informally at the time. It was all informal. So I studied autism. I then went on to study the sensory system, which then led me to study polyvagal theory. And by doing that, it enabled me to basically understand myself better.
Yeah.
So I understood the panic in situations like in social events, in crowds, transitions, leaving the house. Like, my panic attacks increased in so many situations, like leaving the house. Okay. And when I was drinking, before a big event, when you're getting ready and stuff, like, yeah, have a few drinks, so I'd have a few drinks, I'm putting on my makeup and doing my hair. And so I was, had alcohol in my system when I was leaving the house. I had no idea I struggled so much with transitions like leaving the house, for example, because I medicated with the alcohol. Because you see, the thing with alcohol is alcohol dulls your senses.
Yeah.
So the things like in crowds, I went to Slane, for God's sake. I went to Slane and saw Eminem with 90,000 people, but I was drinking, and it was the drink that helped me get through it, you know what I mean? So all these things, I was then able to learn, about my sensory system. I was able to learn about polyvagal, applying polyvagal theory to my life, then basically helped me to minimize my triggers. And by minimizing triggers, I minimize panic attacks. Does that make sense?
Yeah, of course it
And
makes perfect.
Polyvagal theory, like we have an article up. I wrote an article on polyvagal theory specifically for through the lens of neurodivergence, we'll say, and how it can help us. And we have that up on Substack as well, because that would be a whole other, we could talk for an hour. Well, I could talk for an hour on polyvagal theory because I love it. But polyvagal theory is basically just a neurobiological concept. Okay, it explains how our nervous system influences our responses to stress and social situations. And when we understand that, we can reduce things like panic attacks. And also, this is just to say as well, just so there's no misunderstanding, I'm not saying that autism causes panic attacks. Yeah. I hope that's clear, Cír. Is it?
Yeah, I think it is. There is a big overlap between autistic people and those of us with panic disorder.
Yeah.
But yes, no, it is not assumed. Sorry.
No, yeah. So, the way I said learning I was autistic had reduced my panic attacks. So it's not that I'm saying autism causes panic attacks. It's what I did with the knowledge that I was autistic. So my panic attacks a lot of the times is due to environmental factors. It's due to environment and social situations. Okay, but knowing and learning about autistic communication, for example. So autistic communication is valid and is valuable. So rather than, I view myself through a different lens, through the neurodiversity paradigm, and not a pathologizing paradigm. Oh, there's something wrong with me. And by taking on this lens, then also helped reduce my panic attacks, because there's nothing wrong with me, you know, wrong in inverted commas, like, you know. So I just want to make that clear, that I'm not saying that autism causes panic attacks, because that is not the case. Panic attacks happen for everybody, regardless of your neurotype, and blaming someone's neurotype for their mental health is never helpful at all. No. So just wanted to make that clear.
And thank you. I just want to address a few things there that you mentioned, and that's Polyvagal article Sarah did write is on our substack, so I'll put the link in the comments and all that jazz. The other thing is using alcohol as a way to self-medicate or calm yourself down or get yourself through a situation is very common for many people for many reasons. However, if you do feel like this may be an issue in your life, do reach out for help. Alcoholism is a big problem in our community, and just know there is support out there. Once again, I'll put things in the comments about different places you can reach out, but there is ways to get help at a pace that suits you. Another thing you mentioned, Sarah, before we move on, just for those that don't know, do you want to give me a brief overview of what the neurodiversity paradigm is?
I would be happy to, because it's one of my focus interests. How long do you have? I'm only joking. Okay, so the neurodiversity paradigm is not to be confused with the term neurodiversity. Okay, so a lot of the confusion comes from this. So we'll start at the term neurodiversity. Neurodiversity is just a term that was coined in the 90s. Okay, so again, this term is around decades. This term was coined in the 90s within the autistic community movement, the autistic rights movement. So that's neurodiversity. It is basically a term that recognizes that everyone has a different brain. Okay, that's it. Everybody has a different brain. It includes every brain on the planet. It includes neurodivergent, it includes neurotypical, okay? The neurodiversity paradigm, on the other hand, is a specific lens through which to view the fact that everybody has a different brain, okay? So it's just a lens on which to view neurodiversity. And the lens it takes is that there is no one normal or right way to have a brain. There's no gold standard. Neuronormativity is not the gold standard. Okay, neuronormativity is just the concept that there is one way to live. You know, neurotypical is the gold standard, and the neurodiversity paradigm holds that it's not. The neurodiversity paradigm stands in direct opposition to the pathology paradigm. Okay. And the pathology paradigm is the typical narrative that tends to go along with the likes of autism. So I'll speak on the autistic side of it. That we need to be cured, that we need to be fixed, that we have deficits, that we have deficits in social communication, you know, that we've repetitive and restricted behaviors. It takes a very, very negative view. You know, and now it's important to note that the neurodiversity paradigm, it does celebrate our differences, but it also wants us to have support. Okay, so the neurodiversity paradigm isn't like, oh yeah, we have to celebrate this, that, and the other. Do you know, Cír? I think that's a misconception that a lot of people forget. Like, the neurodiversity paradigm absolutely recognizes their struggles. It recognizes that we need support, but the neurodiversity paradigm holds that support is given based on human rights, like, and incorporating autonomy and, you know, including us in things, you know. So that's the neurodiversity paradigm.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but if anybody is eager to read more about neurodiversity paradigm, I would highly recommend Dr. Nick Waller as First Protocol.
She is amazing. Like,
Yes.
I just love her. And I just want to meet her someday.
Goals.
Yeah, I'm trying to get in contact with her. But she's very hard to get in contact with. But look, her book, Neuro Queer, her website is neuroqueer.com. We can link that as well, Cír, can't we? Like, everything that I've learned is based on that. It was her who actually outlined the neurodiversity paradigm. Now, I know there's the term neurodiversity that was coined by somebody else, you know, but the neurodiversity paradigm itself, Dr. Nick Walker actually outlined that because she wanted to differentiate between this biological fact and this emerging paradigm that was coming out of the movement. So she actually outlined that, I think it was 2010. But that'll be all linked as well. But oh yeah, sorry, her website, neuroqueer.com. She has an amazing article. It's my most cited article. I cited in like my academic papers as well, because I'm studying psychology currently. And it is neurodiversity, some basic terms and definitions. It's like my Bible. It's always open. It's just the best article ever. So that's the neurodiversity paradigm. So yeah.
And in true neurodivergent style, we have gone through loads of topics, which like we love here at Neuro Pride.
Yes.
But if we were to go back to panic disorder,
yes,
as much as I hate the term disorder, personally, that's a personal thing.
Yeah.
But if you could wish people know one thing, what thing would you be getting them to know?
I suppose don't dismiss or invalidate somebody experiencing a panic attack. You know, don't think that they are, especially don't say it, you know, you're being oversensitive, or you're being dramatic, or you're being attention seeking. You know, it's a very, very real experience, and it's a very physical experience. It is not just all in our head. You know, it's a physiological response. So that would be number one. Number two would be, we build, at least in my case anyway, obviously I can't speak for everybody, but we often can build associations with the locations on where we had the panic attack. So for example, for me, my first panic attack was in a car when I was 21, and I would have panic, like I would panic about having a panic attack in a car thereafter. And would you believe I'm only 35, or I am 35 now, and I've only just started driving. I'm only just on the road, 35 years of age. Better late than never, but it just kind of will give you an idea of the effect that it can have on somebody's life. You know, it prevented me from driving, from learning how to drive, and I've only started now at age 35. So building up, yeah, so back to the associations. So it's something to be mindful of. If you either are someone that has regular panic attacks, or you know somebody that has regular panic attacks, be mindful of that. So if your loved one had a panic attack, I don't know, like in a shopping center or something, you know, and the next time you go to the shopping center with that person who has the panic attacks, you know, be mindful of that. Or, you know, we could have a chat with them about it beforehand at a neutral time, you know, never during, because that's not a good idea. So yeah, knowing about the association things can definitely help both yourself if you have them, or if you care for somebody else, to be mindful of that. And then the last one is panic attacks are not always hyperventilating, and you know, they're not always visible.
Yeah.
Panic attacks can be very much internalized, and they're actually the hardest ones. So for me personally, when it's amazing to think how our bodies are really, that we can even internalize it, and I think it's like masking. It's, you know, it's you're masking, and it's actually incredibly damaging to do that. So I would internalize them if I am with somebody else who is vulnerable.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. So like maybe a child, you know, if I was having a panic attack around, like, and there was a child or another adult who I thought or who I knew was also had like high anxiety, or some type of mental health condition, I wouldn't have a panic attack around that person, because I wouldn't want them to be panicked from my panic. Does that make sense? So I would internalize it. So if you are, you know, if you care for someone that has panic attacks, to try and be mindful of that as well. It can look like, so for me, when I internalize a panic attack, I'm very, 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 very quiet, which is very rare for me because I'm a talker.
Imagine you being quiet, Sarah.
Yeah, I know. So it's very obvious with me, you know. Like my partner would know, you know, he'd know now, you know what I mean? Because we obviously talk about things very openly and everything, like, you know, so he'd know. So yeah, so three things it was: avoid dismissing, the associations, and number 3 is sometimes they can be invisible. Not visible. Yeah,
that's fair. I think they're all very important ones. And now you may be like, here, I already answered this, and that's totally fair. But if you had to give any advice on how to support somebody?
Yes. Okay, so I'm going to answer this in 2 parts. So I'm going to talk first about during a panic attack, and then general kind of no, sorry, I'm not. No, sorry, I'm not. I'm just going to talk about what happened to me, what helps me personally. Okay.
Yeah.
So for me, when I'm in a panic attack and say you're around me or you're with me, Cír, drop all demands. All demands dropped. Okay. Now, to understand how to drop all demands, you have to understand what a demand is, because a lot of people don't know what a demand is. A lot of people think that a demand is put on your shoes, give me that cup, you know, direct demands. Okay. So demands are more than direct demands. Talking to somebody is a demand. It's a demand because you're demanding the person communicates back with you or to you. Asking a question is a demand because it requires people to think and then answer you. Okay, so be mindful of what a demand is, number 1, and then drop them. And then don't do them. Okay, so especially don't ask any questions or ask to make a decision, because just don't. Yeah. Not for me anyway, just out the window. Give them space, give them as much space as you can without actually isolating them, if that makes sense. So give them space, but in a way, let them know that you're there for them if they need it. If the person wishes, help them out of the situation, you know. So that might just look like helping them outside, like walking outside, getting out of the environment or getting away from the person, because, you know, people there's a lot of people who cause panic attacks, you know. So getting away from whatever trigger, if it is known, if the trigger is known. Obviously with the ones that are unexpected, you will just have to go with whatever the person wants, you know. So the best way to know how to support somebody who has regular panic attacks is openly talking to them about it at a neutral time, you know. So you have a plan of action in place if it happens, so you know what to do. Provide a cold drink, you know. Say if you're in a house or in a restaurant, go get them a cold drink, but don't ask them to drink it, you know. Avoid telling them to drink it, because that's a demand. Okay. And it also it just doesn't work. At least in my case, it does not work. So, but if you just put a little like a nice little glass of cold water over there to the side, I'll just drink it in a panic attack, you know. Whereas if you tell me to drink it, it's too much, it's too, you know, it's just an extra demand that is unnecessary. And the last one is fresh air. So fresh air helps me. Like, so for example, in a car, whoever was driving, I would have asked them to stop at the next, you know, at the next stop, wherever was safe, and I'd get out of the car. Likewise, if I was outside and I had a panic attack, going inside sometimes helps. So just changing the environment. So that's how people can support a loved one. Yeah. At least if I was your loved one.
Yeah.
You know, the best thing to do is talk to your loved one is the best thing, and do it in a non-judgmental, open-minded way, and actively listen. And by actively listen, what I mean by that is, don't offer advice. Basically,
Yes.
just listen to what they're saying, because sometimes people just need to talk. They're not looking for advice. Sometimes it's just good to talk, you know.
Yeah. We talk about this term every so often in Neuro Pride, but the unhelpful helpfulness, where
Yes.
people think they're helping, but they could be making things a hell of a lot worse because they didn't take into consideration what it is you need personally.
Yeah.
And I think that's always going to be important. As Sarah says, talk to your loved ones in a neutral time, because like I love deep compression hugs when I'm having a panic attack, but only off certain people.
Yes.
Like if you, Sarah, or Jillian or whatever was to hug me, I'd be like, get the hell away from me.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
this type of way. But there's like 2 or 3 people in my life that was like, oh, if I could just wrap you up in my arms right now, I would be okay.
Yeah.
So it is about finding what works for you and
Exactly.
what works for your loved ones.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
from a societal point of view, what can we do?
Oh, well, just be kind, I suppose, isn't it? Just be kind. Try not to make a big deal of it, you know. If you saw a stranger, is that what you mean? Like, say if you were out and you saw a stranger having a panic attack.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I don't know. It's a tough one, you know.
I
Because it's
think,
going to be so different, you know, for
yeah,
everybody.
I think personally it'd be okay to check in, so to speak,
Yeah.
even if that's a do you want me to stay beside you type thing. But regardless of whether that's something you're comfortable doing, just not judging people. There's nothing
Yeah.
worse when you feel judged in that moment. You feel people panic. You notice, I'm sure most of us who've had panic attacks have people roll their eyes or huff in annoyance nearby, you know, this type of way.
Yeah. Like, there's a lot of vulnerability in having a panic attack publicly, you know. And there shouldn't be any shame or embarrassment, but the fact is there is, you know. And you know, it's interesting, you know, agoraphobia.
Yeah.
The fear of open spaces is what it's typically known as, but it's actually the fear of having a panic attack in public is actually what agoraphobia is. And I don't know, I just think, well, society, sure, I could do another webinar on society and what what I want to change in society, but ultimately it just comes down to, you know, being a nice person and not judgmental, and also understanding that your worldview is not the only one that exists.
Yeah.
You know?
I think that goes for anything. Let's just assume
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, but people don't seem to get that concept a lot. Like, and to give you an example, talking about the sensory system. So, like, you know, I could also talk about the sensory system a lot. I love it. Okay, but for example, talking about, you know, world views, right? Okay, I'm going to try explain it. Okay, right. Every person is born. Okay, every person learns about the world through their senses, through their sensory system. Okay. Neurodivergent people have a different sensory system to neurotypical people, right? So what does that mean? That means neurodivergent people are going to experience the world differently to neurotypical people. Now, the way neurotypical people experience the world doesn't necessarily mean that's the right way to experience the world. Okay. So when someone says to you, it's too bright in here, this is too loud for me, just believe them.
Yeah.
Don't say, no, it's not. You know, no, it's not too bright. That's not too loud. What are you talking about? You know, so that it's important to know, your worldview isn't the only one that exists. And this goes for neurodivergent people as well, because all neurodivergent people, we're all different too, you know, because we're also human. So, you know, and every neurodivergent person is going to have their own sensory stuff going on and different needs and things like that. So just as a general tip for society, like every single person, if you could just know that, you know, your worldview isn't the only one that exists, that will actually help a lot. You know?
Yeah. Perfect. We could spend hours talking. But how would you support yourself? That was my final question. Sorry.
Oh yeah. So number one, so during it, and number one would be to remove myself if it's a trigger that is in my environment, or if it's, you know, like a person or an environmental situation. So I would remove myself from the situation. The next thing I would do is I splash cold water on the back of my neck. So that actually stimulates your vagus nerve. Okay, so this ties in with polyvagal as well. By stimulate your vagus nerve is responsible for basically relaxing your nervous system, essentially. So by stimulating that nerve with the cold temperature, it will send the signal to your brain to relax. So that is a really, really good one and to do. And then breath work, which I know it's so like, oh, just take a deep breath. And it's so, you know, everybody says it, and it's because it really does work. But when you're doing your breath work, and when I say breath work, I just mean taking a breath, do it slowly, you know, and make sure your out breath is longer than your in breath. But doing it slowly is key, because what will happen is your body, you're heightened anyway, and everything's going to be fast, and everything is just heightened. So you don't want to actually start hyperventilating by trying to do deep breaths, you know, because that has happened to me before, and you end up hyperventilating. So it takes a while, you know, to practice. But the thing as well, like with meditation, so I'm ADHD, right? And I, you know, relaxing wouldn't be something up on my list now to do, you know. I wouldn't be very good at relaxing, like, right? But when I started meditation and mindfulness, I was like, it was my therapist who got me onto it, like, you know, she said it'll be just amazing for you. But it was her who told me about the polyvagal theory.
Yeah.
And my autistic brain, right, I like knowing why, you know. I wrecked my teachers' heads, you know. I wreck everybody's heads with questions, right? So you tell me the why, we'll be friends forever, like, you know. But so where am I going? So what I'm saying is, I knew all my life, like everybody knows, everybody says it about meditation and about deep breaths, that it helps. Nobody ever told me why, you know. Nobody ever told me why it helps. So I never did it. You know, I was like, nah, that's not going to help me. That's just something everybody says. That's a way with the, you know, the fairies or whatever. Like, I'm not going to be doing meditation because I can't sit still for 2 seconds. But I knew the way my therapist described it to me, I knew it was actually going to really significantly help my mental health, and particularly with panic attacks. So polyvagal theory gave me the why. And so that's one thing. And mindful, that's another thing that I do during a panic attack. It's called a grounding technique. So a grounding technique is basically just trying to involve your senses to kind of ground you, bring you back down to earth, or whatever way you want to describe it. So if I was having a panic attack now, so I'm in a room, I would look around for something that I can identify, that I can taste, something that I could touch, something that I could see, something that I could hear, and something that I could feel. So there's the 5 senses, okay? And I just want to note, because people do not note it enough, and it actually drives me bananas. 5 senses, we have way more than 5 senses.
Yes.
Okay, so they're the 5 senses that are commonly known, okay? And I will just add that we also three ones, and that's not to say there's only 8 either, okay? Because there's way more than 8 too, but 3 senses that are so important for neurodivergent people, and people who care for neurodivergent people to know and understand about, is proprioception. Okay, proprioception is basically your sense of awareness of your body and where it is in relation to your environment. The other one is vestibular, which is basically your sense of balance. And your third one is interoception, which is your internal awareness, and is responsible for, our awareness of when we're thirsty, when we're hungry, if we're feeling pain, and those three senses, they're really important to know for a neurodivergent person, or someone who cares for a neurodivergent person. So if you don't know about those senses, you can go look them up right now and you will love it. Take a deep dive into the sensory system, because it will change your life. If you're neurodivergent, it will anyway. And if you're neurotypical as well, it will change your life. But I went off on a tangent there about the sensory system. The next one is that I would do to support myself is to change my environment, as I had said earlier, take a cold drink. And also the last one is coping statements. So I say out loud, I am safe. And the second one is, this is going to pass. And that's my most favorite one. And that actually, I'd nearly get a tattoo of that. I love it so much, except I won't really get a tattoo. I don't even have my ears pierced. But the coping statements are really, really good, and this will pass, helps in so many contexts in life in general, not just during a panic attack. And then, so that's my advice that I do for during. And then, I have like lifestyle advice as well that I would have to do. I avoid the news at all costs. And I know that can come, like, that's a place of privilege in a sense. Like, oh, look at you avoiding the news and all the terrible things that happen to people around the world. It's not that I don't care. It's, number one, the news is just always bad news anyway. I was nearly going to set up, not that I would, but I had the idea to set up like a radio station, and it's just all good news, and people could write in when they won €3 on a lotto ticket, and if they, I don't know, found €20 in their coat that they didn't have in 3 years or something. So avoid the news. Yeah, for me, avoid the news. And the reason being is because one of my triggers is harm coming to people I love, to myself, but also harm to other people. So harm for me is a very big trigger. And I also have hyper empathy, which is when you experience other people's pain and suffering yourself. So I have to avoid the news, and I will avoid social media news feeds as well, especially if there's something really big going on. Like, I know when things are going on, don't get me wrong, like, I'm not an ostrich either, I don't stick my head in the sand, but I have the type of mind, it will consume me, it will consume me, like it did with COVID. I got consumed by COVID and all the harm and everything that went with that. So for lifestyle support for panic attacks, for me, is avoiding the news. Had to reduce my caffeine intake. Unfortunately, it was terrible. It was terrible. I had to reduce coffee. It's my only voice left, but I was drinking like 8 cups of coffee a day. And like, if you knew me, like, you'd know that I don't need caffeine. Like, I have a lot of energy, but I love it. I love caffeine. So I had to reduce from 8 cups of coffee down to 3. I'm on 3 now. I should be at 2, but I'm quite content at 3. I will not give up coffee. If you paid me, I won't give up coffee. And my first cup of coffee, like, going back to polyvagal theory, there's a concept that came out of polyvagal theory called glimmers, through the work of Deb Dana. And her glimmers, my first cup of coffee is actually a glimmer for me. And your glimmers in your life are like those small little micro moments of calm that often go unnoticed, So examples, I think glimmers a lot of the time for neurodivergent people are stims.
Yeah, they are.
So a lot of my glimmers are actually visual. Like, I have a lot of visual stims, like, twinkles, anything that shines. So actually, which is going to sound so cheesy, but one of my glimmers is like the twinkle in my child's eye when he smiles. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's one of my glimmers. And my other glimmer is sup of coffee, my first sup of coffee in the morning. So if we increase our glimmers and reduce our triggers, we will regulate a lot better. Other lifestyle support is the daily meditation and mindfulness, applying polyvagal theory, regular therapy with a neurodivergent practitioner, if at all possible. I know that is a privilege to be able to go to therapy, because it's there's no supports really for adults through the public service, and if they are there, it's incredibly hard to get them. So we will link that as well, Cír, won't we? We link how you can find a neurodivergent practitioner. It's through Thriving Autistic, that organization, but it's not just for autistic people. There are practitioners. It's a whole directory that they have, a global directory as well. It's like worldwide directory. They have therapists, neurodivergent therapists from all over the world. And the last thing would be in like lifestyle for myself, for panic attacks, is self-compassion, self-understanding and self-awareness, but through the lens of the neurodiversity paradigm. Like I rarely have panic attacks anymore.
Brilliant.
And it was through studying, and I know that's a privilege as well. Not everyone can study things, not everybody has the time to study things, not everybody, you know what I mean? So I know I'm coming from a place of privilege that I could do that, because not everybody has that, but that's why we did the article. That's why we did the article. We did a little article, and hopefully in that will explain things free and give you some advice and some really good resources as well on it. So I think that's that. Yeah, that's all I wanted to say there.
Perfect.
I'm wishing quiet, aren't I, Cír?
Yeah, we can make a whole series.
I
Love it. Thank you so much for your time and for your knowledge. We are so lucky to have a community that are so willing to speak about their experiences to help educate others and help form that idea of community and that feeling of not being alone. So I thank you so much for your time. Is there anything you want to say to people before we say goodbye? If not, it's fine. But
I suppose it is such a cliche thing to say, that you're not alone. But know that you're actually not alone. Like if you're someone who suffers or experiences panic attacks, it can be quite an isolating experience, especially if there's people around you who don't experience it. And that's why when you find community, like say for example in the neurodivergent community in Neuro Pride Ireland, your experiences are often mirrored back to you because they are experiences of other neurodivergent people as well, and when your experiences are mirrored back to you, you start having more compassion for yourself and you treat yourself better, and as a result your mental health improves. So basically what I'm trying to say is when you find your community, your neurodivergent community, engage, go to the events, have the chats. I went to a webinar before with awesome training, and it was absolutely incredible. There was people chatting in the chat box, and I was talking about things to do with my sensory system, actually, surprisingly enough. I always get it in somewhere, but and there's things that I would have been talking about with like I can hear electricity, for example, just one little thing, whereas no one I've never met anybody else who can hear electricity, or the noise of a butterfly's wings when they flap. Oh, like I can't stand it, right? But no one and anyone around me, typically in my typical, people who I know, my friends, my family, they wouldn't have known that butterflies' wings even make a sound.
Yeah.
You know, but when you're with your community, they like, there's loads of people I'm after meeting now in the community that's like, yeah, we hear electricity too, you know. And it's like, yeah, now I know, you know, we experience the world differently. It doesn't make it wrong, you know, it doesn't make me deficient, or it doesn't, I don't have deficits because of that, you know. So again, with the panic, you know, with panic attacks, you will find in the neurodivergent community people just talking about it openly, and that's what we need, you know. And yeah, you know, so you're not alone, as cliche as it may sound, but it's the truth.
Perfect. Thank you. And yes, Neuro Pride community is open for all neurodivergent adults, whether you are diagnosed, self-identified, or questioning. Come over to our Facebook group, check us out on Eventbrite, all that stuff. All the links are down below. But thank you, Sarah, so much.
Thank you,
And
Cír and Neuro Pride. Thanks for having me, Noah. Thank you.
bye, everyone.